Good evening, y'all. It has been a busy, busy day for me. Today's Wednesday, April 15th, 2026. I'm going to wait here for a minute or two for people to hop on because you don't want to miss this. We haven't been talking about the Hatfield stuff in quite some time. So we got some, I don't want to say new information, but it definitely supports what we had thought. That's what I should say. Yeah. So before I get into this, as you all know, I made a post last night about my wife, and I'm not going to go into too much detail for purposes, but there is someone in Beckley that is currently slandering my wife. Making phone calls, backdoor things, text messages. And I'm not going to name names right now, but some of you already know who this person is. And my wife would give the shirt off of her back for a lot of y'all. You can do a lot of things, but lying on my wife ain't one. I'm just going to let you know that. That's all I'm going to say for now. All right, we got a handful of people on here. So let's get started. So when all of this stuff was happening, right, in 2024, there was just a lot of things didn't make sense quite at that time when all these allegations came up against Hatfield, and then nobody did anything, including the county commission. They kept saying, oh, we can't do anything. We're not the boss. Just around and around and around we went for months. It was over 3 months, I believe, where Hatfield finally resigned. But then if you remember, we did some FOIA requests and found out that Hatfield had actually submitted his resignation or the notification to the commission counsel, Victor Flanagan, right, stating his intent to resign. And they refused to accept it. So let's go over this, shall we? If you haven't followed the Hatfield case, I believe you might be able to just still understand what I'm saying and what happened in this situation. So I'm going to read some things. According to reports in the Registered Herald, the commission intentionally hid the information talking about the intent to resign, right? By keeping the resignation a secret, they allowed the 84-day legal window for a special election to expire. So, if you're 84 days before an election, you can have a special election, basically. You can do a special election. You have 84 days, okay? And when that 84 days runs out, then the commission can then appoint someone to that position. Well, they didn't want to have a special election. So that's what this is saying. that they allowed the 84-day legal window for a special election to expire. So this was a calculated move to ensure that the voters would not have the opportunity to elect a successor. Instead, county commission successfully ran out the clock so they could handpick their own replacement. Now, I don't know about you, but in a democracy, it's the voice of the people that really matters most. And people who have tried to take that away from us, including the city of Beckley, over the city manager form of government, if you remember, they were supposed to put it on the ballot and didn't. And those city council people were voted out next election cycle. Made a lot of people mad. Anyway, I don't want to get too far off topic. So there was an appointment on November 1st of Tom Truman. Once the election window had safely closed, the commission formally appointed Tom Truman as the prosecuting attorney on November 1st. Put a pin in it. November 1st, 2024. Under West Virginia Code 310.8, the replacement must be of the same political party as the person leaving. But Hatfield was a Republican, and Tom Truman was a registered Democrat. However, official voter audit logs prove that Tom Truman was a registered Democrat. I actually have his registration right here. And he did not switch his party affiliation to Republican until November 22nd. Also put a pin in that. So he was appointed November 1st, changed his registration on November 22nd. That means that for 3 weeks, a Democrat illegally held an office of a Republican constitutional office and exercised the power of the state without legal authority. I want y'all to sit with that just for a minute. The legislature actually passed a bill in 2025 because of this particular situation in Raleigh County, which is, in my opinion, extremely embarrassing. It's sad that we're setting such a bad precedent. Anyways, Senator Garcia put forward Senate Bill 586. This bill here. And basically, this was passed in, let's see, April 12th of 2025, and it came in effect later, but I don't really remember. I think it was June? Anyways, to make a long story short, because this bill is rather long, and you've sat through me reading bills before, and I'm not going to do it tonight because we're probably both very tired. But this bill potentially closed any potential loopholes that there may have been otherwise. But this sets it in stone. And this is something that I need to talk about too. Because it says in this bill that you have to have your party registration must match for an entire year, a whole year, before you can take office of that party. So if I'm a registered Democrat and I want a Republican seat, I would have to change my registration, wait a year, and then proceed. Okay? So now it's set in stone. You have to wait a year after party change. Okay? All right. So the state of West Virginia effectively admitted that the way that the office was filled was a violation of the spirit of the laws. Now, I'm a member of the Democratic Executive Committee. I was on the county until I recently resigned. But I'm a member of the State Executive Committee. Okay? And we know that if there comes a vacancy of any kind, the party then gets to appoint someone, but we're not going to appoint a Republican. It's crazy to me. So, Hatfield backed out of his resignation that he submitted in October. And this is why the August notice does not even count. That this is a desperate attempt to ignore the law and hide the fact that they ran out the clock on the voters. And I'm about to show you how this excuse is a lie. The September hire proves that the deal was done. The commission hired Tom Truman on September 11th. These dates are very important. If Ben Hatfield had really backed out of his resignation, the commission would not have hired the replacement weeks before he was supposed to leave. By hiring Truman, the commission proved that they already accepted the resignation and were moving forward with a hand-picked successor. You do not hire a new person for a seat that is not going to be vacant. Am I right? I'm right. And I'll pause here for a second. Remember how I said back then how Truman was a part of the cover-up of Hatfield, and that he was just another good old boy, and how his stipulation, if you remember, for being hired as the prosecuting attorney was that he not rehire the assistant prosecutor that was terminated by Hatfield. The whistleblower, if you will. A lot of you didn't want to believe me. A lot of y'all don't want to believe me about a lot of things. But I haven't been wrong. The special prosecutor conflict. On October 8th, Tom Truman was already signing felony indictments. And I actually have a copy of those. There was an indictment for Stephen Neal on October 8th. There was an indictment for Angelina England. There was an indictment for Olivia Moore. And there was an indictment for Zachary Cook. And under his signature on every single one of these indictments, he handwrites in there, special. Every single one. I have them all highlighted at the bottom. He handwrote in special. as in special prosecutor. Under the law, you can only have a special prosecutor if the regular prosecutor is disqualified or the office is vacant. If Hatfield had backed out and was still the boss in October, then Truman had zero legal authority to sign these indictments. They could not have it both ways. Either Hatfield was gone and the 84-day rule was triggered, or he was still there and Truman was illegally impersonating a prosecutor. Say that fast 5 times. The tactical stall to kill the election. You know, I'm going to pause here for a second too, because this is a lot of maneuvering and a lot of manipulation, all for the sake of politics. You know, when you are in such prestigious positions, elected positions, you're no longer serving a party. You are serving the people, your community, the constituents, whoever elected you. There is a assumed integrity that goes along with these offices. These types of games have no place. The whole story of Hatfield coming back to the office for a few weeks was a tactical maneuver. They needed to move the official resignation date just far enough to make a special election impossible. And if you remember, I've talked about how when he came back, everybody was reassured he would not come back. Oh, you're safe. You're fine. He's not coming back. And he showed up and intimidated every single one of those people that worked at the prosecuting attorney's office, and they filed cases over it. Those lawsuits are still filed and waiting to be filed. Okay, by hiding the August email and using this backing out excuse, they successfully stole the election from the voters of Raleigh County, and they treated a constitutional office like a game of keep away. Bottom line to the voters, which is me and you, because we live here, a resignation in a constitutional office is a formal legal act, not a light switch that you can flip on and flip off. The commission and Hatfield used a shell game to ensure that the public never got a say in who the next prosecutor would be. They ran out the clock on democracy. The Falquero rule, why Hatfield couldn't just quote unquote back out. Because there's already a ruling on this, folks, in the Supreme Court, which has precedence in this particular case. The Raleigh County Commission is trying to claim that Ben Hatfield backed out of his resignation in October, so the August notice didn't count. But the West Virginia Supreme Court has already ruled on this exact issue in a case called West Virginia DEP versus Falquero in 2012. According to the Supreme Court, syllabus point 4 of the case, a public employee cannot withdraw a resignation if the employer has already acted in good faith reliance on that resignation. The reliance. The county commission acted on Hatfield's resignation the moment they hired Tom Truman on September 11th. And then comes the cover-up, right? The legal lock. Because they took the affirmative step of hiring his successor based on his resignation notice, the deal was legally, quote-unquote, locked in. Under the Falquero ruling, Hatfield lost the right to back out once the commission relied on his word to hire Truman. Their claim that he came back to work to reset the clock is a legal fairy tale. The Supreme Court says that you cannot flip-flop a resignation. That once it is submitted and the wheels of that government start moving to replace you, it is a done deal. You know, we used to say that as kids, no takesies backsies. That applies to this. By hiring Truman in September, the commission proved to the world that they had accepted Hatfield's resignation. Trying to claim that he had backed out in October is just a tactical lie to avoid the 84-day election rule and stop the voters from having a say. They are claiming that November 1st they were using their emergency powers and Tom did not need to be a Republican. Okay? So this is what they're saying. They're like, oh, this was an emergency. The code allowed them to appoint an acting prosecutor as an emergency basis. It does allow for that. The problem is Hatfield jumped up and resigned early, and they reacted to it. October 25th, he resigned effective immediately because why? Because he lost his DVP. Remember when I said this back then? I said the county commission is not doing anything because they are waiting for the results of this DVP and they are expecting to get him off. And when that did not happen, that's when things started to shift. The commission immediately named Tom Truman acting prosecutor. Therefore, they used the power under the emergency circumstances, which arguably they can do. They can appoint that non-Republican again, right? In an emergency situation. Then they tried to clean up the mess. They thought that they had that appointment on November 1st by appointing Tom prosecutor. The minutes from the meeting do not say acting or emergency. It just says prosecutor. And that does make a difference. It absolutely does. He took an oath of office on November 1st, being the prosecutor. But if they were using their emergency 30-day power on November 1st, why was he there 2 months? It's a good question, isn't it? It's because they were using their permanent powers, which required him to be a Republican, and they just didn't think anybody would look at the party registration. Under West Virginia law, when a prosecutor resigns, the county commission gets one shot to fill the seat permanently. Think of it as a single golden ticket. On November 1st, 2024, the commission decided to use that ticket. They held a formal meeting and voted to appoint Tom Truman as the permanent prosecuting attorney. So what's the problem? What was the illegal move? You can't use the golden ticket just on anyone. The law says the person you pick must be from the same political party as the person who left. Okay, we're back. Oh, okay. My throat got dry for a second. I've been doing a lot of talking today. So Ben Hatfield was a Republican and Tom Truman was a Democrat. I went over that. By using their one shot to appoint a Democrat to a Republican seat, the commission didn't just make a mistake. They committed a legal foul that made the whole appointment void from the start. The law also puts a timer on the commission. Excuse me. They had exactly 30 days to fill the vacancy once Hatfield resigned. Hatfield quit on October 25th. The commission's power to fill that seat officially expired on November 24th. Once the clock ran out, their appointment power for that seat was gone. Then there was the January ceremony. So in January of 2025, the commission held a second ceremony to reappoint Truman, hoping to pretend that the one in November never even happened. And why would they do this? They can't. They spent their one. The bottom line is that Tom Truman is actually not legally our prosecuting attorney for Raleigh County. And you can look up the cases that set precedents on this very subject. And every single one of them has said that these situations require good faith. I truly believe that all this evidence, if it is presented to a court, they would find this exact thing. And that leaves us in a bind if that is true. Because that would mean everything that Tom Truman signed as acting prosecuting attorney for Raleigh County, including the Cochran case, is null and void. Which means it all has to go to court again. How many cases have they done since November of 2024? Tons. We all know how much publicity the Cochran case got. I know some people weren't happy with the verdict and some people were. It was kind of split from where I sit. I can't imagine having to put these families through all this all over again and what that would look like for them to have to relive it all. All because the county commission wanted to play games. Whenever I said this was when all this was happening, I said the county commission is trying to figure out how to maintain power and control. Well, they found a way, but it was a crappy way, an illegal way. And it's really sad that if this has to go to court the way that I think it will, because if you have this information, if you're privy to this information and you have a law license of any kind and you don't report it, it could come back on you. And oh, by the way, doesn't the county commission have its own little lawyer that's supposed to be looking over and making sure that every T is crossed and every I is dotted? There is no way Delegate Root did not know about all of this. We have a lot of cleaning up to do in Raleigh County, my friends. We have a lot of cleaning up to do. Because I don't care what party affiliation that you have by your name, you better damn have some integrity when you get into office. People are relying on you to do the right thing all of the time. And it's sad. Anyway, there's more to come. There's more information that needs to come out. There's more cases that are going to be filed. We'll keep following it. Tell me what you think. We'll talk later. Remember to like, comment, and share. Help get this out there. Because we got to do something. And the only way something gets done is if we do it.